If you recall the previous part of this series, you remember that I ended it on a somber note about YouTube being shut down. But before we move on to how YTPs changed after YouTube, there is one more important incident that I missed out on while researching for the previous video, which is probably the darkest incident YouTube had ever faced. You see, back in early 2015, there was an ongoing feud between two of the foremost site's moderators, Rocto and Ted. It escalated to a point that Rocto lost his modding powers and got kicked off the site. However, Rocto would just proceed to stalk and harass Ted off-site until the latter would leave YouTube on October 20th. After Ted left, there was some sort of fraction or groups of people supporting either Ted or Rocto, with some proceeding to harass Rocto off-site as some sort of revenge. The feud would escalate with multiple people getting involved, trying to expose each other. Truthfully, I can't give you a reason why it had escalated the way it did. Heck, if you ask people directly about the feud, most will simply not remember why it started in the first place. Now, what happens afterwards is rather confusing and a bit hard to tell. So what happened is that a few years later, Rocto would become friends and enter a romantic relationship with a woman known as Ivy Hulivana. But later the relationship would turn sour, even bringing in Ivy's boyfriend, Radok. Afterwards, Ivy would cease talking to him for months until deciding to check his account again, only to realize he had ended his own life. Now, Radok himself was one of the few YouTube veterans who had a similarly, if not equally bad reputation as Rocto. What makes the matters even worse is that the both of them would have a massive falling out around the time the conflict between Ivy and Rocto would take place. So quickly rumors would spread that Radok had harassed and encouraged Rocto to end his own life. However, these are only rumors and there are no screenshots or other pieces of solid evidence to prove such claims. Both Radok and Ivy have a negative reputation in terms of socializing with people, especially with falling out, but pretext doesn't equate to evidence. Another thing to consider is that in spite of how polarizing Rocto's death was, one universally agreed upon fact was that Rocto had always been a mentally unstable individual. We also have very little insight into his personal life, so for all we know, his death could have had nothing to do with his relationship. Despite the circumstances of his passing being rather misty, it has led to people accusing the YouTube community as being responsible for Rocto's death. This, if nothing else, should serve as an example as to why few people maintain a deep distrust over YouTube veterans, even if they made massive strides in turning their life around. Another morbid fact about Rocto's death is that YouTube would shut down just 1 year later after the incident, so it is not unreasonable to assume that such a series of events did noticeably contribute to the site shutting down. What remained out of Rocto's presence online was his Bandcamp account, where you can still find and listen to the music album he created, one of the tracks of which you can hear right now. Listening to the album, I can tell that Rocto possessed quite a real talent for composing electronic music, with the songs containing a distinct sound, dark cyberpunk atmosphere, and a unique usage of vocal samples. It really makes you wonder how things could have turned out different if he was still alive with us today. Okay, from here on out it's not gonna be nearly as dark, so stick around for regular YTP stuff. After the site shut down, people moved to two different forums, one being Neon Castle, for older users that weren't into YTPs anymore, the other YTP Mania. Neon Castle would receive barely any web traffic to justify maintaining it, so it would quickly shut down as well. But there would be a third option, more popular than either of these, that being Discord. Now I personally got to witness how Discord changed the YTP community. Back in the day, if you wanted to partake in somebody's collab or tennis, you would need to submit your video through Gmail or forums. It was very cold and impersonal compared to what we have now. Discord is just so much better to use in regards to things like feedback or just general interaction and banter among other entrants. With that site becoming mainstream, there was also a large boom in collaborative projects and tennis rounds. Some YouTube channels owed their popularity due in large part from posting lots of collabs. Having a Discord server nowadays for your YTP collab is almost a must, even if you're announcing it on YTP Mania forums. Another benefit Discord has over YouTube is that if you are on a server you don't like, there are alternatives. If there are no alternatives, anybody can just create a new server with their friends. You don't need any knowledge in coding or have the finances to maintain the servers like you need to do with internet forums. This new platform for internet communities gave the YTP community a second wind, making it open to more new methods, practices, and ideas than ever before. Although some are dismayed at the fact that Discord had essentially landed a finishing blow on internet forums, most of YTP Mania's user base primarily used the private YTP Mania Discord and not the site itself. The website nowadays primarily exists for archival purposes, forum events, and announcing collabs. And mind you, somebody still needs to pay over $100 out of pocket every single month to keep the forum alive, even if the active user base is minuscule compared to the old days. And yes, they still have full responsibility if anybody decides to conduct a hack or a raid. That's the reason why internet forums have seemingly disappeared from the mainstream internet. They're just simply too hard to manage relative to the alternatives, and currently maintain their appeal almost exclusively among programmers or people who feel nostalgic for very old days of the internet. On top of that, just managing to register on the YTP Mania forum is a massive hassle, because it, like YouTube, started to get increasingly more private lately. I'd say not to concern yourself about not being able to join it too much, because its purpose is to support a specific niche, not necessarily being the center of the latest trends and developments. Although it hosts unique events like Secret Santa, and users create YTPs based on another pooper's favorite sources and upload it on Christmas, as if it were a gift. In regards to new innovations in the YTP community after YouTube, there's virtually no site documenting it, so I decided to ask around, even share a Google Forms link, where people could anonymously answer what they believe to be most noteworthy changes. I also have knowledge from memory and experience as my YTP creation journey started in 2016, so part of the information will come from that as well. In 2018, Jimmy Davis coined the term YouTube fart for his YTP collab to describe YouTube groups that almost exclusively use audio sources. Not exactly the most original idea, as TO2 Smack Shows did the same thing years prior, and the Russian site on the internet did barely manage to coin the concept earlier than Davis, titling their videos as audio poops. In regards to the stuff pertaining to the YTP MV community, in the mid-2010s, one specific type of video would gain notoriety, that being shurikscan.wig replacements. What is shurikscan? Well, it is the name of a keygen that had a remix of a song from Ninja Gaiden 2. YTP MVs of it date back to 2009, but the video you need to remember is RoomScan, YTP MV of the Tommy Wiseau's movie The Room. That's because the original Sony Vegas file of the video got leaked online, and people started using it by replacing the samples within the file with a clip of their choice. As the years would go on, more and more people would start creating videos by using the reg replacement method, some of which being very low quality. It would become a meme within the YTP MV community due to how easy it was to create these types of videos. Okay, so out of curiosity, I decided to actually try out the shurikscan.weg file to see how it actually works. So what you actually do is just take a video you wanna have in your Sony Vegas.
Nice ass, Squiddy.
Okay, you pick a video, and then just, you see this is the room.ava file, you click replace. You click replace. No, you do that, and then you get the thing. Okay, let's see how this actually looks. And with advancements in accessibility and sophistication of technology, you also have poopers that started making their videos on their phones. Phone video editing software was seen as the new Windows Movie Maker at first, something only amateurs would use, but now there are YTPs made on people's phones that look better than plethora of proofs made on computers. That is insane! Technological advancements didn't stop there, because in 2019 we did also get YTP+. After almost a decade of on and off development, now computer software can create YTPs for you, just like people used to back in 2007. You can download it from a dedicated Discord or purchase it on Steam of all places, although it's not referred to as YTP+, probably something to do with copyright or marketing. There would also be innovations done to YTP tennis, as in the same year of 2018, System 128 and Slapstan would create a YouTube channel, Mr. Daxio, to upload their tennis matches in, although dozens of more people would join in, making it a much wider project. The goal was to see how many rounds it is possible to have in a YTP tennis match. Turns out, quite a lot. And it's still going! 6 years later it's still going and anybody can join in. This project would inspire other people to strive for something similar, but then having their own variations of the formula. But I can't understate the downright cosmic scale at the amount of entries. The amount of raw footage surpasses the total length of multi-season TV shows. And this whole project has a doc file with it that documents everything in profound detail, functioning as a collab diary of sorts. This tennis/collab is truly unlike anything I've ever witnessed before, not just in terms of YTP videos, but YouTube content period. It is not a typical video watching experience, and watching all the rounds is improbable, and with the general chaotic and hectic nature of the usual rounds, the best thing I can compare the project to is looking through a kaleidoscope. Every person will have a unique experience of watching it. Also, they remind me of the one scene from 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I find it kinda amusing. In 2020, the 15.ai website would get launched, being the first notable instance of a publicly accessible AI language model that allowed users to create dialogue with fictional characters from franchises like Team Fortress 2 or My Little Pony. New, more advanced websites would follow suit, changing the landscape of sentence mixing forever. YTPers are of mixed opinion on using AI as a substitute, and plain old sentence mixing still remains the backbone of most YTPs to this day, but many don't have gripes with using both if needed.
I wanted to say a few quick thoughts on the use of AI text-to-speech in YouTube poops. Now, 10 years ago, my closed-minded ass would have hated it and shunned everybody that did it, much like many poopers back then shunned Flash Poops, which was an ironic name due to most of those videos not even using Flash. Only a select few actually did. Now I'm under the opinion of, if the tools are available, use them. Blender, 3D models, SFM, green screen effects, algorithms, AI-generated speech. If you can butcher a piece of media with it, by all means do it. I believe in creativity, and that anybody still out there making poops should continue to modernize and evolve the medium. Besides, the AI speech can be funny sometimes because it doesn't always get the syllables right, so in its way, it has its own flaws that gives it its own dirty charm, much like trying to make out a hard-to-decipher sentence mix that everyone interprets differently.
There are other smaller developments like people starting to use Blender more often for YTP tennis rounds. The first person to actively use Blender in their videos is attributed to be Great British Turd, who was active all the way back in the late 2000s and early 2010s, but such software would be very, very rarely used, as it requires you having a really beefy computer to use it. Now, computers have gotten much more powerful, and due to this making organizing tennis matches very easy, you see Blender and other 3D animation software utilized way more frequently. Lastly, a few people seem to have developed a strong nostalgia and fondness for YTPs from the 2000s, creating various parodies, emulating fads and poorly made videos of that time. The first person to really get well known for such a style would be Spigoton, with classic videos such as YTP Sexer, with other notable classics from other channels being BGM21, Elf the Movie, and Mr. Bean Sex Jackass. There are also a few meme trends here and there when classic YTP characters somehow manage to regain relevance, giving a testament to their immortality as comedic sources, and there are even animation projects where the CGI cutscenes are remade from scratch in various art styles, which, even for smaller scenes, requires quite a lot of time investment to do, so it is impressive the type of dedication people are willing to put in. You may be surprised when we'll be going back to YouTube once again. The site wouldn't actually be gone for good as I initially made it seem. The project to revive it would start sometime around fall of 2019, spearheaded by people on the Neon Castle Discord server. Then, in February of 2020, it would enter a semi-public beta testing phase to ensure the servers of the site wouldn't get overwhelmed with too many new users before going officially public on April 1st. The forum, frequently referred to as NewChew, wouldn't actually have all that much notable going for it by itself. In many ways, it was the same as its previous iteration, excluding the fact that it managed to gain affiliation with Magix, a publisher of Sony Vegas editing software. There was a full-on intention of making the forum actually profitable, that it would contain not just sponsorships, but even backing from a dedicated Patreon.
I spent a very long time in the finance business and mortgage industry. It's most of my background, most of my career was spent there.
We would never get to see the implications of that, as the forum was shut down on April 11th, less than 2 weeks after going fully public. How did that happen? Well, it was due to a series of multiple factors that boiled down to people simply not having a unified vision for the site. Excluding the plans of turning the forum profitable, in Dopley's friend circle there was a clear vision of making the site have a clear political bent, it being a progressive alternative to YTP mania, while also having a much stricter and harsh moderation. Meanwhile, moderators that were more recent to YTPs, i.e. those who started in the 2010s, not the 2000s, wanted the forum to be apolitical and not bring politics into it, while also having very lax moderation rules. And while such different factors would sort of coalesce and become amplified once the COVID pandemic would begin, there was a channel dedicated to discussing the coronavirus on a YouTube Discord server where one YTPer, DM Hofland, posted the Fox News article about the pandemic. Many people didn't approve of anything written or filmed by Fox News being shared, and it would kickstart a flaming debate. And it was absolutely hysterical to witness if you were there at the time. You had multiple people flooding in, announcing their takes or reaction to somebody else's takes, and few others that started to act like doofuses to annoy the mods. My favorite moment has to be though, when Crazy Donut jokingly stated that Obama created the coronavirus, which led to Peter calling him wildly transphobic. At the end of this heated discussion, multiple people got banned or kicked or left, so you had many coming to Twitter, coming to the forums, and coming to the YTP Mania to express their discontent. And all of this happened on March 21st, before the forum would even get officially launched. Things would die down somewhat after the incident, but many people were already left with a negative impression on this YouTube revival project. Once the site would start running publicly, it would fall under controversy once again due to mass bannings, weird enforcement of rules, and a few people even getting banned who hadn't done something particularly wrong on the forum. In light of these events, Doppler would decide to step down and hand over ownership of the server to Awesome Guy 11-7, trying to dissociate himself from the project. This will lead to newer staff attempting to rework the moderating structure, including unbanning Hofland, upsetting Doppler's friend circle, some who ended up leaving or even being banned for unprofessional behavior. In turn, the older staff, the ones responsible for recreating the YouTube forum, decided to get themselves banned off the site on purpose. And considering how the forum held a partnership with a proper company, it was a disaster waiting to unravel. After enough pressure, Awesome Guy would eventually step down as the owner, resulting in yet another different person taking charge, before ultimately the forum would end up being shut down just a few days later. I can only infer that the dream of having a profitable forum simply became impossible in such an environment, as no company would ever partner with a website with such haphazard ownership changes, and the reputation of the site was bad enough that there weren't that many people who were willing to be patrons. Even after YTP Mania's owner, Smonge, would disappear at the same time, leaving most of the staff there confused and not having a clue as to what to do next, that forum still maintained a higher and more active user base than YouTube. Why did Smonge disappear? Well, during this whole drama, Dew, a co-owner of YouTube, would confront Smonge about how he was running his forum. Since Smonge had social anxiety and Dew was his close friend, he got heavily shaken up by the event, prompting him to disappear without notice from the forum for 2 years. After this, Newcastle would almost entirely cut themselves off from the remaining YTP community by heavily purging their members list as people kept leaking screenshots and information to outsiders. Dopley himself would decide to distance himself from the server, leaving it entirely. And the Newcastle server would eventually become abandoned, fittingly rebranded into Angry Dome, functioning as an invite-only server where people came together, reflecting upon not just the YouTube drama, but their general experiences with old YouTube, both positive and negative. And they remain fairly open to anybody that has questions or are curious about any specific events from YouTube history. However, most of the channels, although archived, aren't visible unless you gain permission from the mods to ensure that people won't just come here to look through and ridicule old chat logs. So likewise, I will not share the link to the server publicly in my paste bin. If you have to, you'll find a way to get to it. Also, thankfully, most of the people that got involved in the drama in any way would eventually reconcile with each other or move on. Now as for DM Coughlin, the guy some jokingly credit as the person that destroyed YouTube with a news link, well, he would quit making YTPs entirely. Part of the reason was that people wouldn't leave him alone about his moment in the drama, and partly because he started to not see any value in his videos. He even lashed out at his subscribers for asking him to not private his older videos, but I can't help but feel that the person he's lashing out towards the most is himself.
With all of my YouTube poops that I made, there was nothing valuable about them. They were waste of time videos. There's nothing special about that content. There's nothing valuable there. Nothing meaningful. They're just crappy edits of pre-existing media that I did. There's nothing that I could do that some other YouTube pooper out there can do a million times better. Okay, there's much better people out there to watch than me.
Damn. After all the chaos both the YTP Mania and YouTube forums would experience, in 2020 there would be yet another YTP forum project known as Pitchbacks, whose owner was Nisox Kurasami, and it was shut down in less than 3 months due to lack of users and technical difficulties. Not much to say about it, as nothing is left of it, not even an archive form. The domain for it expired and nobody bothered to check, so now it's primarily known for its Discord iteration. In conclusion to this section of the video, most YTP spaces would end up adopting rules forbidding political discussion. There would also be various new troll groups that would exist to target and harass certain individuals, a trend that has mostly died down, although you can still occasionally encounter new incidents. Despite the risk such downward cause, majority of YTP spaces have gotten more progressive, as seen by the fact that most popular political YTPs exist to mock American conservatism. So much so that penis prager has become just as much of a household nickname as Spinge Bill. Also, some of the most well-known and influential YTPers are also transgender and are widely respected. So, if anything else, this desire of dividing up and isolating part of the community from each other based on political grounds has ironically harmed social progress it strive to achieve, not accelerated. And well, if you've gotten this far in my series, you should know that trying to have a demagogic control on what is right or wrong in making internet video edits simply doesn't work. It didn't work the last 5 times it was tried. I highly doubt it will work the next 5.
And then I started seeing it everywhere I looked, all these fucking pricks. Everywhere I looked, doing the exact same fucking thing. Over and over and over and over and over again. Thinking, this time is gonna be different. No, please. This time is gonna be different.
One of the reasons why Doppler would quickly distance himself from YouTube drama and Newcastle as a whole was because at the time he was heavily focused on a different project. He was focusing on remastering the Zelda CDI games and making them playable on PCs.
So that project came about because it was around the time that Twilight Princess HD either got announced or released, I can't remember. Basically, the joke was, what if they did that, but like for the Faces of Evil and Wand of Gamelon, right? I tell people that it took 4 years, but it was probably closer to 2, just kind of with a hiatus in between. Because at one point, I realized the amount of work that needed to be done to actually do these games correctly. And I was like, well, there's no point in doing this because nobody cares. This is a worthless project. I was feeling pretty dejected, and then I was like, well, you know what? I want to actually finish those projects. I want to do this. Even if it's the dumbest thing I ever do, I want to finish these projects. I released them. I thought a dozen people would care, my weirdo friends. Well, I was very surprised because the reaction was sort of overwhelming.
There was even a whole separate server created called Merlin's Palace, where people would come to playtest the games. The full versions of the remasters would come out on November 27th, 2020. People wanted him to remaster Hotel Mario and other CDI games as well, but he made it clear that from there on out he'd focus exclusively on entirely new projects. And yet, the first new project would be RZ, The Jewel of Fairmore, a game that came out on Valentine's Day of this year. And for the sake of the video, I decided to actually purchase and play it to get an unfiltered opinion of it. And my verdict is that the game is alright, just alright. Gameplay-wise, it's a rather simple platformer, but it does what it needs to do, considering that it doesn't have a long playtime. It certainly has a homebrew type of vibe going, in the sense that this primarily was a collaborative project between friends and acquaintances, particularly with how the cutscenes themselves were drawn by multiple different artists.
and I had the right group of people in my life, the right group of artists, the right group of amateur animators that I like sort of talked to them about doing that as an idea, and they were very, very receptive.
Some people criticize such inconsistency in art style, which the fans seem to typically retort by stating, well, it's supposed to be bad. Even though Doppler himself has made it clear many, many times that he went out of his way in taking the development of this game seriously.
Nobody knows that they're weird. It's not something that's like pointed out, because that would have just been awful. Nobody wants to play a game that thinks that it's a joke. That's an exercise in frustration.
Aside from that, it does feel like a project that was very personal and important to Doppler, particularly in retrospective his YTP days. There are people that did not want to play the game out of principle due to what happened during the Lucho drama, but even they admit that the game itself is harmless from what they've seen.
I decided to sort of focus on the theme of breaking cycles and not repeating the past, which ties into sort of the development of the games themselves, right? Like, don't repeat the same mistakes.
I would only recommend getting a Rosette during a sale if it's knocked down a price, or because you're a massive weirdo like me and are deeply fascinated by CDI and YTPs. As far as I'm concerned, Doppler is doing well, he managed to rebuild goodwill with many people, and he fully intends on developing more games. That's where the chapter of his legacy currently ends, and I wish him well in maintaining that goodwill responsibly. So that's that. This is where I'm gonna put this retrospective to rest. Now yes, there are still a dozen things I haven't mentioned, but this video is as long as it is and I have been working on this series on and off for half a year now, so I am a little tired. I decided to prioritize events that I figured to be most noteworthy and most interesting, or simply weren't covered by anybody else. Of course, that means that there are more things to cover, more things to record, and well, time isn't frozen and decisions you make today may affect hundreds of people tomorrow. With these videos, I hope people will no longer be left in the ignorance about how much rich history this bizarre internet subculture has, or that at least some of it will remain preserved as old wikis and screenshots inevitably erode or disappear. Such is the fate of history in general, as countless information and stories end up lost, because nobody bothers recording it or even view it as irrelevant or unimportant. Frequently to a point, past generations of humans appear to be alien, because they maintain very little insight into people's unique routines, their daily life. When the reality of the fact is that they were just as juvenile as us.
In the old days, when I was at school, we used to think it was really racy, cut up photographs, yeah? And that was amazing, because you cut them up and you can have a bloke's head on a woman's naked body. Fantastic! That was just brilliant, yeah? So that was like you see, that was the art and mechanical way of you see, and then there's been various things, but a lot of this stuff has been inaccessible. Television and radio were held by these major companies, and now what's happened? YouTube and so on, you're seeing the injunctions thing, all kinds of fractures are happening, and people can just take it, do what they want with it, and it's bugger all. People like me can do it. So there we are.
I got another horrible idea. Oh shit, no. So, if you're wondering what I replace it with this.
Oh my god, it feels so good, oh yeah.
And now we're gonna see what have I created.
Oh yeah, who's
Oh my god, this is so hot garbage.